The council has assembled. They are eager to hear your report.
Hello, welcome to the council. We begin tonight's meeting of the council by calling the council to order. Hello to everyone and thank you for joining us. The council is a live Twitch talk show and podcast discussing Star Wars: The Old Republic. I'm Elise, and with me are my fellow council members, Magic Ace.
Yo.
Redna.
Hello there.
The radio voice is very nice. And Sakari.
I don't know if I can keep up with this. Hello.
Tonight we're going to talk about story design in SWTOR.
And after our live broadcast, you can find us everywhere recorded episodes of the podcast might be found, like our YouTube channel or our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Council SWTOR or thecouncilswotor.com. That's our webpage. Woo-hoo. Also, you can find us anywhere podcasts are found because we're everywhere. You can Google us. It's great. But the most important thing is Twitch, which is the Council SWTOR. Okay. And then you've got Twitter, which is at the Council SWTOR. And then you've got Patreon. It's patreon.com/the Council SWTOR. You can literally find us everywhere. We're great.
All right. Okay, well, good job, everybody. We got the show started. Congratulations. All right, everybody, let's get into our icebreaker question of the night. As we've explained before, this is just a kind of discussion topic, very light, hopefully, with the point of getting some discussion going. So the question of the night is, and feel free to answer in chat if you are so inclined. We'd like to know what you have to say about it too. What is one of your favorite, or I will add one of your most memorable moments in all of the SWTOR story so far? And let us start this one with Elise.
Wow, I get to go first. So, I don't know if it was my favorite or my most memorable, but, and we'll see what Magic says later. I liked the part where in Kotet, right? Where there's a section where you have to choose between two companions who you're going to save and who you're not going to save. And I don't really want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played that yet, but
really? After all this time, I'm pretty sure we could discuss it.
You know, I don't know. I have a thing about being a spoiler.
I think even Redness come through it. Right? You've played it? You said so on a previous show. Most things.
I'll say yes.
All right.
I'm not holding back anymore.
Well,
if he hasn't seen it by then, it's not our fault.
Yes,
it's okay. I got you guys tuned out. It's not like I'm going to actually hear what you have to say.
So you have to choose between Vet and Torian, and one doesn't make it. And I loved that because it was a very BioWare moment. So I was glad they went there. They really haven't gone to that level yet, which is slightly disappointing for me as someone who really loves that kind of stuff and BioWare stories. So I was thoroughly excited and impressed when I got to that point.
I wonder if Musco has kept the statistics on who has chosen which of them, from the beginning of when they launched it. I'd like to know what the numbers are right now.
They know when people log in and what they buy. Yeah. They know how many people.
Who has chosen Vet or who has chosen Torian? I would be interested.
If you guys didn't choose Torian, you're sick and twisted. Sorry.
I could not kill. I tried one character to kill Vet.
Torian again?
Shut your face. Anyways.
Scarface.
But if you played the Sith Warrior though, and you romanced Vet, then
she'll be fine. There's
that would
plenty
be
of
cold.
them around. There's only one Torian.
Or if she's like your bestie.
I bet you most guys pick the girl and most girls pick the guy. And I bet you that's just kind of like a universal general principle out of those two.
All right, well that's me. I'm gonna pass the torch to Redna. Olympic style.
So I have to go old school.
This is a relay.
If you don't know about this, then well, you suck at life and get over it. But there are these two flashpoints called Peril 5 and Maelstrom Prison.
Wow.
And in particular, my favorite reveal was that a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Winnie the Pooh was a little frog man. Freaking fantastic.
Oh my god, yep.
I mean,
what's funny is that Magic
call
Ace
him
and I are
Oteg,
clueless because we are like Darksiders. We're Imperials, and you can tell right now.
That is true, man.
Are you talking
Your
about
quest
the
giver
Jedi
is-
Master who looks like Yoda or something? What are you talking about?
Oteg, Master Oteg.
Oh yeah,
is
yeah, him.
the voice actor
Yes.
that plays him.
Coming.
It's the same voice actor that does Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, I thought that's what you were talking about, but for a second I was just like, what? What do you do? Okay, yeah. No,
But
you're
beyond that, I actually love those two because it's all about, helping the exile in order to release someone from the deep clutches of the Empire. You have to get to Maelstrom prison, and that's the big reveal that basically Revan has been on ice this whole time, and you've just set him free, which has some dire consequences much later in the game. But I really, really dug it. I remember in particular too, because when the game first came out, he has a very unique cosmetic appearance that you can't duplicate on your own characters, and also is just much higher detail. I mean, he's got scruff on his face and
The textures are fantastic.
intricate scars and everything from the mask that he used to wear, and it's a really good, compelling story, and it does tie over into your whole where you see HK and he vanishes in a puff of smoke. That some asinine reason people thought that was him dying. Like, yeah, because vanishing in a puff of smoke has ever meant death in any universe ever.
It's not this
Gross,
one.
man.
I wouldn't put
if
it
there
past
was, like,
HK though.
lady-
You never know what to expect with that guy. I bet you he's still alive. Old
He's
HK.
been rebuilt again. He's somewhere else.
Hey,
Oh my
we've seen you
gosh,
before.
that's who Snoke should have been. Is HK-47?
HK-47, yeah.
Who should have really been?
Snoke is
The
Kefis.
facade.
HK-47 is Kefis.
I dig that.
Oh my gosh, Kefis, yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, so what is my one? I would probably say I think it's kind of a tie because it's almost the same kind of moment. But at the end of the Sith Warrior core story and at the end of the Inquisitor core story, you have that showdown in the Dark Council against either Barriss or Thanaton, respectively, depending on which story you play. And it's terrible now because the gold is so easy to kill. But way back in the day, that used to be quite a fight, and you would be pushed around.
Get help to kill Thanaton. I was
Yeah.
like, can someone go help me?
It was an accomplishment. You had, if you held back and you geared up a little bit, then you could go in there and solo it. But to get that done, and then like you get to that part that triggers the story before the guy dies. And especially Barriss. Barriss is phenomenal in that. Like the way that he appeals to the council, like, do you not hear me? And like you feel his power slipping away from him, like his grip on the council.
So beautiful.
It's so well written. And then the council basically turn on whichever one it is. Like especially with Thanaton, like who's it? Gravis or one of those Ravage maybe. They like kill him.
Yeah.
And they give his seat to you, which is just
It's great.
so
They're like,
vindicating.
it's your turn now. You can sit here. You're like,
May I remind everyone, I actually have not played that story yet.
Wow. Well,
girl,
spoiler
all you
alert.
have to do is step foot on
7 years in.
Korriban, and everybody tells you anyways. Okay, so it's not my fault.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're going to
If you're
take
playing
the
a
big
Sith,
guy
you
out.
know eventually you're going to take down your master. So it's not really a spoiler at this point.
It's not.
I've attempted though to keep myself knowing the details. So
Okay, well then you and Vet get really jiggy with it in the temple when you're unlocking the doors. FYI.
really, cool.
No, no.
We're going to have all kinds of misinformation, so you won't know what to believe and what not to believe. And that's how we'll protect our spoilers. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Okay.
No,
Anyway.
if you want a solid spoiler, and actually one of my other major surprises was in the Jedi Knight storyline. The discovery that one of your companions was basically right-hand man working together with Revan back in the day, and ties directly into the whole novel about him. And it's really well done throughout
Yes.
his entire companion story.
I don't
really
think
dug it.
Yes.
I made it to that point yet.
Keep playing.
I don't think. I know about all the Children of the Emperor stuff. I already got to that point, right? That's this one, or is that the council?
Yeah. No, that's the same story. You're just earlier. Keep pushing through. It's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't made it that far yet. So I think I'm on Nar Shaddaa for both of those.
I was actually surprised that I enjoyed the Jedi Knight storyline because, you know, I kind of hate Jedi. So it was a little surprising that I enjoyed it, but it's pretty good. I have kind of like overlapped with Elise on my first like standout moment. I have this policy where I won't do new content on a character I love. I do it on a character I don't care about. So that way if a mistake happens, then I'm not totally angry or I don't lose someone. With the exception of knowing what was coming with Theron, I did not run my jug through there because she is like all about Theron. So with that exception, but any other content I run through first. So when I get to my jug, she chose Vet because it's my jug and she's a warrior and she was friends with Vet, so she chose Vet. And when Torian died, I did not get over it for days. I kept going, oh my gosh, Torian! Even though like 30 other characters on 2 different servers, 30 each, still hadn't done this yet and could still pick Torian. I was still so mad. I was like, oh no, Torian. My husband came over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. He's like, you need to calm down. I'm like,
you need to calm down. There's a legitimate grieving process. You go through you first go through denial.
Yeah.
Then you go through anger.
I just stared at my computer screen going, no.
The worst part,
really ridiculous.
The worst part though is when you pick Torian, that gives you crap about it.
I know. It's just like, wow, you're basically a piece of crap.
You sit down. Yeah.
Torian's like, oh, I'm so thankful. You know, I'm grateful. Thank you. And Beth's like, she always threatens she's going to haunt you. Now you know it's true. No, but my other, like, moment that I actually enjoyed was that moment where you find out that your ancestor in the Sith Inquisitor storyline was actually a rival of Tulak Horde. And here you think you're a slave and you find out, holy crap, I'm actually basically Sith royalty, and I didn't even know it, and now I'm going to stab everybody in the back, because that's my job.
Yeah.
But the one I really, really hated the most of, like, a moment that just caught me, and I was really aggravated about it, is when I realized there's no way to get the Emperor out of your head. And you get to meet Lana and Theron and Koth and all these cool people, and you're carrying around the freaking Emperor, and people like Koth are worshiping him. And then you literally want to murder him. You want to rip his heart out, but you can't. So that was the moment that I was like, I almost hate this game. I'll remember that forever. Like, forever. He's stuck in my head.
I totally agree. That's why I have never played it again. So I don't have 33 characters that have even lost Torian. Because, well, frankly, not all my characters should have him in the first place. But my gunslinger still has all of his original companions.
Yeah, I have several that have their original companions, but not because I don't just want to do the content, but it's like I've already done the content like 10 or 15 times. I'm not going to go through with every single character. That's so much of doing the same story.
Right.
I just can't do it.
3 times. That's it.
You've played through it 3 times. Wow.
No, I've played through sections.
I see.
My bounty hunter, I finished it, and I made it through 3/4 the way on 1 and like 1/4 the way, or through. I've made it through Kotfi on 3 characters.
I struggle with the bounty hunter especially because my bounty hunters are male, and the males kind of got this kind of voice. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
And he sounds just a little bit thick. So it's like he's like
Brian.
I'm the commander.
I mean, he's awesome.
Of the Alliance.
Honestly, that is the only male voice in the game I like. I hate the male smuggler's voice. I hate the female smuggler's voice.
Yeah.
The male bounty hunter and the female bounty hunter, though, I really like their voices.
Right.
And of course, the female trooper. Can anybody say Commander Shepard?
Yeah, you hear their voices in other games. But that one, for some reason, it's just like, I can take it on the bounty hunter. But when he steps into the Alliance commander position, it's just not the voice for the Alliance commander, in my opinion. He's just some, some thick bounty hunter. It just doesn't make sense.
Keep saying that word, Zakari.
Thick. Not that. Thick has changed. It used to mean slightly doffed. That's a South African word for everybody.
Maybe it's not an American way that we're thinking of it. Anyways, how about that straw poll?
Very good. Let's move on.
It's because you're not supposed to say retarded anymore. People get all butthurt about that.
I was being a little bit more careful.
You were being politically correct.
Yes, I was doing a good job. Well, I thought I was doing a good job.
For everything, and a recorded episode might be that place.
Yeah, so that we have a record of it.
Our poll for the week was we were asking about what the community's favorite story content or when that occurred. So the question is, when was your favorite SWTOR story content released? And the choices are. Now, totes to Rena for making these A, B, C, D, E compatible. At lunch through pre-Rise of the Hutt Cartel, between Rise of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan. Then C is celebrating Shadow of Revan and pre-Kotfi. Then definitely Kotfi and pre-Kotex.
I feel like that one is a bit of a stretch.
People that don't care about lore probably do think that that's definitely the best.
And Eternal Throne and Beyond is the final choice. So, for those of you who are in chat, please feel free to vote.
Vote with the letter, the very first letter, A, B, C, D, or E.
It follows your choices. So, yes.
Oh,
now let me ask a question,
Redna.
Redna.
Saying now, go Redna. That was good. I didn't look at the visual earlier. Nice.
So my question is between Rise of the Hutt Cartel, is that including Rise of the Hutt Cartel, or is it the little sliver between Rise of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan? Because that's technically Forged Alliances, in which case it would be F.
Forged Alliances was leading into Shadow of Revan, I thought.
Right. So
yes, that's what I'm saying. It's between the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan.
Forged Alliances was pre-Shadow of Revan.
Right.
Oh, you didn't say pre-Shadow of Revan.
This is one, Rise of the Hutt Cartel, and the pre-Shadow of Revan, and then the next one would be Shadow of Revan and pre-Kotfi. Or are we?
Yeah, we're just having fun with it. But yeah, I think you meant Rise of the Hutt Cartel, pre-Shadow of Revan. So yes, I see people are voting. So that is awesome. Have we all voted in the chat poll?
However you interpret that, go you.
Go you. That sounds good to me. All right, so I suppose we should probably talk amongst ourselves while everybody is voting about what ones we would have picked. So, Elise, why don't we start with you, because that's kind of the rotation tonight, I guess. Which of these would you pick?
So, I'm kind of two minds. I really did not enjoy Rise of the Hutt Cartel. I seem to be in the minority for that, but I really did not find it entertaining. I found it very laborious and annoying. So,
is that like the planetary questing? Running around having to avoid mobs, basically?
Yes, but it was just... So, I don't play this game really to be challenged in my combat. That's... If I want to do that, I go do group content. So if I'm trying to find out what the story is, I really honestly cannot tell you. I do not have a coherent understanding of the basic story in Rise of the Hutt Cartel. Because every time I tried to go out and follow the quest line, I would aggro so much crap and spend so much time fighting that I got frustrated and would quit.
Oh, I see.
So I want to be able to just get the story. Yeah, I want to get the story first. Then I worry about content second. That's how I play all of my games. So, and then I challenge myself the second time when I don't care anymore about the story.
So really, we just need to make a movie out of this.
No, because then if I have choices,
okay.
If I want to do that, I could watch Fluffy Ninja Llama. She does all of the cutscenes. She makes a video of all the cutscenes of all the various choices. Right. I could do that, but that's not the same.
How cool is that? So, and if you link them together, you could actually have links on YouTube where you click this option and it takes you to that conversation choice.
Yeah, correct.
That's not a bad idea.
That said, I love so far what I have seen mostly, except for the counselor story, the pre-Rise of the Hutt Cartel base, like original level 50 stories. Thought they were all fairly well done. and at least what I've played. I really like Shadow Revan. It's probably my favorite expansion, without a doubt. And then I liked Kotet, if we're talking about the most recent stuff. So I'm kind of all over the place, kind of. Do I like one section better than the other? I probably like Shadow Revan the best.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's okay to like multiple things. That's the downside of these polls is we kind of force everybody to pick one. But yeah, I mean, you're totally allowed to like, a bunch of them. So
right. What I have played on all of my characters, though, is Shadow Revan.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the one I like the most.
All right, Redna. Okay, what about you?
So actually, to your point, it's like you could ask, when was your favorite SWTOR story content released? And if you're actually not just talking about all of that story, together, but instead there's a single story element that you might have really enjoyed, like say your favorite story release ever was the whole quest to get HK-51. Despite some of the laborious scanning portions of it, it was incredibly compelling, and that whole ship sequence at the beginning, the abandoned ship was so like haunted house, like had some really good feels to it.
The camera angles really is what I remember, like looking up
and the
into
lights that would go out, and it was, so if that was your favorite, you would be saying, oh, well, B, between Rise of the Hawk Cartel and Shadow of Revan, because that was like 2.3 or 2.4 when that came out. But as a whole, I would definitely say that I tend to prefer the launch to pre Rise of the Hawk Cartel, and really it's mostly the launch stuff. I particularly like the part of it is because I like how massive it was. While every single one of the base classes had its own story, they actually did have callouts to one another, and it was all part of a larger galactic tapestry. So I really liked that. And then when you started digging into the depth of the companion stories, where you discover that Vet and Risha were raised as sisters together, I mean, there's a bunch of connections between the different companions themselves, and even some of them make cameos on other characters.
Like Doc, I want to say Doc and Kaleo, if I remember right.
Kaleo comes strolling in, and you're like, holy crap, I know who she is. I like the pre the best. And really, I'll be able to explain further when we get into the meat of the topic this week,
right,
precisely why that is.
I think
that's
fair.
And if I could just say really quick, not to roll over Sakari's section, but those of us who came before 4.0 or like whatever, I think I came in right before 4.0 went down. I have to say that I know what you said about all the classes interlinking, but it's so much muted for me because there was so much stuff to do. I was in that 12 times
the big blast
experience section, and so I was just trying to get to endgame. Like I was just trying to get leveled. So like the impact of all that really wasn't as momentous to me, and I just wonder whether or not that's true for kind of people who came in the same time as me or later.
That's a good theory. Yeah, because I mean there was a while there where the only thing that existed in Endgame was Eternity Vault. That was it. And and some serious gearing craziness, RNG gearing for PvP. So for the most part, the place to be was leveling characters, and so you could level up this one, then turn around and level up that one, and just kind of get to experience it. It's very focused on in the very beginning on the core stories. Right,
but not even just that. You had so much content when we came in. The veterans had played it all, 1,000 times. So, but when you came in during that period of time, and everybody who's coming after, there's so much stuff. So if you want to at least experience all of it the first time, you're not really focusing on, really getting the nuance of all the characters. You're picking one class, you're finishing it, then you're moving on to Rise of the Hawk Cartel, and then you're going on to Shadow of Revan, and then you're going to Kotfi and Kotet. And with you not finishing all the base classes, you really aren't getting, you could be missing that nuance that the writers put in there of that interlocking all the classes, which really is cool.
I'm glad you said that because it reminded me. I actually have it. I know now unequivocally what is my favorite moment of story content. It's when you're looking at the Star Cabal for the agent and you see all the people that are in it and you see people from all the different stories, like Kolovich and stuff on Tython. You're like, whoa, my mind is blown. All these people are super important and they've got a secret thing going on. What? That was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing.
Very
I forgot all
cool.
about that, but when you said interlinking, I was like, oh, ching, oh my gosh, I remember I loved that so much. And my husband hadn't done all the stories, so he didn't know what I was talking about. I was pointing at each hologram. I'm like, he's from the Bounty Hunters, he's from she's from Tython, blah, blah, blah. And I was like pointing all these people out, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they are secretly the shadow organization in control of the entire galaxy. You know, it's almost, you know,
The Shadow Cabal.
yes. Or like it reminds me of like the early Bond movies, you know, with the Spectre.
The Star Cabal.
It's from,
Well, and that's the thing too. Even to your point, Elise, actually, is a lot of people are completely unaware that there's so much depth that, in point of fact, the agent storyline itself has 3 distinct separate endings.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not even just 2, one for light or dark, but there's even, if you do a certain amount, you can actually get a 3rd separate ending.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So.
Very cool. Oh, I guess I would probably throw in with you guys. For me, probably the core stories were by far the best era of this game as far as storytelling is concerned. I think one of the drawbacks of that was that, you know, they have the planetary progression and you're leveling. So you go from this planet, which is this level zone, to this planet, which is this level zone. And for me, leveling all those stories through there got very repetitive. Like now I go to Balmora, now I go to, you know, wherever else. That to me got old. I kind of wish that they had been a little bit more, not that they can do much with it, you know, but that was the only downside I think through that. They were, especially when you get there, you do the planetary story arcs. They got to, you know, I think the Tatooine one was really cool. That was actually very haunting. Yeah, there's some really cool ones throughout there. So, but for me, I think definitely leveling all of those characters through, and when you there's some subtle change that happens in one of the stories, but you don't really think much of it. And then when you come through one of the other stories, and that's the story that affects that change that affects the other story, that I think is really cool. That kind of a thing. The you know, there's a lot of intricacy and a lot of subtlety that I really liked about that. And then of course after that things, you know, changed and they started using other philosophies of story. But we will discuss that, I'm sure, here in a minute.
Magic Baby totally agrees.
All right. Speaking of magic Ace, what is your if you were to pick one of these from the poll, which one would you pick?
I would say C, celebrating SOR.
Shadow of Revan?
Shadow of Revan, right. I just call it Revan. Yeah, I definitely say Shadow of Revan, just because I really liked whenever you met these new people and you continued on just like that. I was really excited about it. I liked having Revan involved, and I liked the fact that you were finally concluding Revan, so he couldn't keep popping up like Kefis. Like, it was finally gonna be over. And I also like that it led into
6.0's coming, I'm just saying. Revan!
Yeah, okay. Touche. There's Revan and Kefis. No. Well, I guess it has to be that, just due to the fact that I loved the whole Revan storyline, because, you know, Revan fangirl, I've only mentioned it in like 10 episodes, but yeah, I really liked the Revan part, and I loved that it went in, like when you did the story on Rishi, when you're trying to find whoever the person spreading the rumors about you being a pirate is, I liked that there was someone from your actual storyline that meets you on Rishi, and you have a little mission to do. That was personally one of my favorite things, because it's like they were continuing, even though it was a new story that all the storylines were diverging into, there was still something of your original story that was in there. So like when you're, I think the Barson-Thor, you create a holocron. Whenever you're an agent, you go back and save Watcher 2 because she's been kidnapped, and you know there's like something from each story. So it's not just this watered down, everybody has the same story like we have now. It was something specific to your story. I liked that.
Right.
And so I would definitely say C. What are the results then, Elise?
So the community voted their favorite with 53% or 262 votes was agreeing with the folks who were saying that launch content was their favorite. So at launch through Rise of the Hutt Cartel. Second was between Rise of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan with 98 votes for 20%. There's a huge drop between those two. Then celebrating Shadow of Revan and pre-Kotfi with 81 votes or 16%. No idea what that noise was. Then definitely Kotfi and pre-Kotet with 36 votes or 7%, and Eternal Throne and Beyond with 14 votes or 3%. Did we get some results from chat?
Yeah,
we have some voters in chat.
Looks like we had something similar in as much as, almost half of the people said A at launch. And then we actually then broke down. Nobody liked Rise of the Hutt Cartel. So you got a lot of Elise fans out there. And then we had just as many who were celebrating Shadow of Revan and pre-Kotfi. And we did get one for the Eternal Throne and Beyond. But our
hats off to you.
Kotfi and Hutt Cartel got
okay.
Nothing.
So let's make sure we're fair with this. Like I mentioned earlier in this poll, we forced people to pick one. So yes, I may really have loved Rise of the Hutt Cartel, but I liked Shadow of Revan just a little bit more. So I picked Shadow of Revan. But I think that's not necessarily an accurate representation of what I actually like. You know what I'm saying? In this, it's like, well, I had to pick one. I was forced to categorize. So I do know that if we were to get maybe a better finger on the pulse, some of these numbers would change. But I think if everyone had to pick their number one, I'm amazed at how much of a leap. That's 50, at least in the community poll with 491 votes, 53%. That's for every two people, one person said core story, and then another person was kind of split all over the place. So. Very interesting to me.
Although, to be honest, I would expect there to be a lot more on E just because of the opportunity to kill Quinn.
And Beyond, yes. And Beyond is important.
Well, I mean, there was moments I liked out of each individual one. There was not one specifically that I hated completely. Like, killing Quinn was a really huge moment. I loved that. It was great. However, I also loved that in Rise of the Hutt Cartel, there was a specific difference between the pub side and imp side, and it was against each other. Like, the Republic wanted to save it. The Empire was like, yeah, we want to save it because we want the Isotope 5 that you know nothing about. I just wish Isotope 5 would have played... I'm sorry, my daughter's trying to open my stove. Would have played a bigger role in the stuff we're doing now, like Kotfi and all that.
Danger, Will Robinson. Emergency.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Good opportunity to jump into the deliberation section. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight was the evolution of story as they have written it in this game. There's been kind of a philosophy that they started the game with, and then that philosophy changed kind of mid-game, and that philosophy's changed again, and now even with 6.0, we may see even yet another change. So Redna has some thoughts that we'll let him present here on the evolution of story in this game, and then from there, I guess we will jump into more of a discussion about what it is that he has in mind. So take it away, my friend.
Well, and mostly just because I was trying to think what is even contained in these breakdowns for our poll, and what was released in between, and I'm sure I missed stuff because I know I didn't include things like Section X being added, which wasn't particularly story heavy, but there were at least quests that involved killing things. Although I guess Section X was when HK51 was released, and that was actually pretty awesome. But anyway, at launch we started out with, and I'm just kind of painting a picture of kind of where the story elements directions have been forged from expansion to expansion. We started out with 8 base class stories. They diversified their storytelling elements. You had different responses based off of if you were a non-human or not. You were male or female, if you were light side or dark side. Of course, there were dramatic differences for the factions. You also ended up getting 5 additional stories for each of the companions. at least, and your first companion, you actually had, you had quests as you went through those cinematic cutscenes that sent you off to different planets. It was originally actually gated by how far along you were in your base class story. You had multiple romance options, and sometimes if you had more than one romance option for your character, that could create conflict. Because I remember, for instance, on my Gunslinger, you end up having the chance to romance Risha or Akavi. But if you decide to run down that path for both of them, there comes a decision-making moment where if you say, I love you and want to be with you forever, the other one comes storming in and says, I'm going to kill you. Like, what
only
the heck?
if you're male.
And then
you're for females.
You're totally pulling a Han Solo.
The female cannot be romancing Akiva, or Akavi, or Risha. That's true.
No, I mean, like, the females didn't have multiple options. The warrior got to have a one-night stand with
sleeping
Pierce,
all over the place.
No.
Yeah, but it's not like romance.
Well, unless Wookiees are your thing, right?
But no, I
agree with you on that.
You know,
and that is actually something worth bringing up, is that with the launch of the game, there was a clear bias concerning whether or not you were male or female and what those types of romances could be. Quite frankly, you could argue that this was a sexist representation of storytelling within the video game. Additionally, there was no kind of same-sex or polygamous or whatever. Like, you didn't have anything other than a traditional heterosexual opportunity. And I think one of the other things that they
be able to be a slut if I want to, man. I'm paying for this game. Give me my
you need to replay the agent story.
I think one of the things
I love the agent story. I have multiple agents.
I think that actually one of the things that BioWare has even been known for is the fact that they didn't even permit female characters from romancing non-humans. Like, many of the
exception of kind of Vector, because he's a Killick joiner.
Yeah, but
that's who I had in mind too.
Overwhelmed by pheromones and adjusted, but he's still human.
Right.
Which is, kind of interesting. It's like, okay, so women can't, when you look at the fact that in sci-fi, they use other species to represent race relations.
Yep.
And basically the message that BioWare is saying is that women shouldn't be in interracial relationships. That's
or what they're saying is women are more reserved. Men are like, give me all you got.
Well, it was the Captain
Kirk. Both ways.
It's the Captain Kirk phenomenon for the guy's side.
The Captain Kirk phenomenon.
Well, I always thought Riker was a lot worse than Kirk.
Yeah, indeed.
I don't know.
Why are we talking about Trek suddenly? How did we get way off course?
Kirk slept with anything that was female of any type. It doesn't matter if it had the parts or not. If it was female, he's like, boom. That's what this game is like. They're like,
people,
you're a guy, have this exotic female, not of your species. Oh, you're a female? Too bad. Here's a bunch of humans for you.
All right, keep going.
So, and to that point, we did end up getting the addition of certain same-sex romanceable options in some of the planetary storyline and stories that were released later going forward, starting with Rise of the Hutt Cartel. But we had a lot of flashpoints. Some of the flashpoints even connected one to the other, such as the example I had where Terrell 5 went to Maelstrom Prison. We had operations. Now, what ended up happening with the operations is that involved into an entire separate ongoing story arc as well, because with Karaga's Palace, actually, even the fact that Eternity Vault took place on Belsavis, which is where the Dreadmasters were broken free from, and then at the end of Karaga's Palace, you see that they tie in that the Dreadmasters had been involved in that, and then it gets a lot more overt through Eternal Conflict and Terror from Beyond and Dread Fortress Dread Palace to conclude that. But it just kind of exemplifies how diverse it was. We had operations, flashpoints. Oh, we also had planetary stories. We also had bonus planetary stories. And originally, it was so hard to level that you actually had to do the planetary stories and your class stories and a flashpoint or some PvP or some bonus quests in order to just keep up with the level of planet.
Right. Or you get, by the time you got to Alderaan, you got destroyed. That's what I noticed.
Yeah. I will say, though, when we were talking about species, the agent does get a chance to, air quotes, romance the Chiss Aristakar Saganu, but it's just a kiss. You could be called the Red Flame or whatever. And then they totally missed it in this new Flashpoint when they could have let you have that romance and they didn't. So,
romance in a Flashpoint. It's like a.
I'm say there could have been
It's
a really
like a
sweet
one-night
cut
stand
scene.
kind of thing.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Flash
Well, like
point.
they do with Garrus in Mass Effect. There's not a real scene. You just flirt a little, and then it fades away. Like, it could have been like that.
And actually, I forgot, HK51 came out pre-Rise of the Hutt Cartel. Treek came out during.
You had the fade away though in Shadow of Revan. Remember?
Fade to black, yeah.
Yeah, that's whatever. Yes. Okay. Move on.
So Rise of the Hutt Cartel then just drops. You lose all of those class stories. You get 2 big faction stories that are remarkably distinct, with subtle nuances depending on class. They do have conversation keys that make them different. Kuat's story was introduced with the GSF story for their co-pilots. Dread Fortress and Planet and Reputation and story carried through operations and concluded this big galactic threat. And Treek was involved, and it was concluded with Forged Alliances, which was a series of flashpoints that you got to play the same flashpoints that looked identical from both sides, and they just changed out the bosses. And
sounds remarkably close to what we've got going on now. Just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Shadow of Revan, we got back to having 1 individual class story each. It kind of threw us all a little bit of a cookie. Some of them were actually pretty neat, and some of them were completely pointless. You got the planetary story, and what we did get introduced here really heavily was that we got planetary story that connected into the new flashpoints, and then back to the planetary story through 2 full planets, Rishi and Yavin 4. I liked this presentation, actually. And then it culminated in the Temple of Sacrifice operation for that whole story, with an option to experience a solo conclusion, so that you didn't actually have to go in and do an operation to finish the story element. But the option to do so was available. Ravagers actually had an incredible internal story. Most people are completely unaware of it because they're not paying attention to the voice acting going on around
Spacebar.
Yeah. Well, it's not. A lot of it isn't even during cutscenes. It's actually voice acting as you're moving through areas that you really start to pick things up. Even like during phase transitions of a boss fight, they're explaining what's actually happening, and it makes it interesting. But again, completely unrelated to the rest.
Here comes the boss.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that the story of Ziost was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And the conclusion of that, artificially delayed and kind of, I thought the delay kind of ruined it for me, because I thought that the conclusion of the Ziost story was really awesome. But it was like, really, this is what you made me wait for once it finally did come out.
They should have just dropped that all of Ziost at once and just stopped it at the end of that. That would have been great. They picked a bad point to kind of put the story on pause. Trying to make deadlines, I guess, or whatever. It wasn't a good shot, but it was good overall. Now that it's not there, that was really good, I think.
Yeah. And then we got to Kotfi. Kotfi and Kotet in a lot of ways are very similar. But with the inclusion of Kotfi, we received a single story. We removed all of our companions, other than HK51 and Treek or any other Cartel Coin purchased companions. We removed all factions. We removed our own character identity, regardless of any of our previous class story, and with very limited acknowledgement of any diversity in our own character type. Essentially, even other people in the game are removed because they said anybody significant has been killed. And remember, so they don't, like, Elise's character, Council character, Dark Council character, doesn't exist in my version of my trooper going through the story any longer.
Right.
And where's my notes? I lost my place in my. Okay, so essentially, you guys are no longer in the game, and the game mechanics themselves. This is something that I didn't mention before, but with the launch of the game, one of the wonderful things was for all the planetary stories, all the bonus stories, all the other content, even through the flashpoints and everything, it was group facilitated. It wasn't required, but you could have friends with you grouped up, and you all got to make choices on how you were going to respond and how that story would unfold and influence the outcome for one another. With Kotfi, they freaking got in your face. They put mechanics to prevent you from being able to even get into one another's phases, and they phased everything out. You don't run across people when you're doing these story elements. Like, they really made it a single player.
Let me Yeah, let me throw this out there because this happened to me recently, actually, and I probably maybe have mentioned this on the council already. Apologies if I am repeating myself, but when I was taking my tank through Kotvi on veteran mode, trying to get all those veteran tokens, and I got to the one where you do that soul quest out there in the dark. I forget what the name of the chapter is. When you go and you have a one-on-one, but you don't have your companion with you. But you go meet, Valkorion. He decides he's going to leave you for a while. That's where you run into Satil Shan and Darth Mar, all that kind of stuff. Visions in the Dark, I want to say is the name of the chapter, something like that. But at the very end of it, you have that shadow Valen that you have to fight in the cave. And I could not beat her. And I was like, okay.
It was so hard.
Because it's veteran mode, and B, I'm a tank. I don't have the DPS to get through this fight, And so I was like, well, I can absorb some damage, but she's basically out DPSing me, and I was legitimately stuck. I couldn't get a companion to help me out, and I couldn't have anybody jump in to help to join me to help me out. I was stuck, right? I'm like, this is where this guy ends because I can't get through this until I was able to gear up.
You actually can have someone help you.
But
the thing is, they don't get any progress for it at all. They have to do it all over again for themselves.
No, I had stream people try to jump into it with me and help me kill her and could not get in. So, I mean, it was bad. Like, eventually I was able to gear up and I came up with an idea.
That's because they have to be doing it with you. Like, they have to start the story with you because Magic Hummy and I took forever to figure out. Once we finally figured it out, they literally have to start with you from the beginning, and they have to beat the initial one on veteran mode as well in order to then merge with your storyline.
Well,
they don't get credit
awful.
for it.
Yeah, I mean, so you play the whole chapter for nothing, essentially. Anyway, all I'm saying is this, Redness, to illustrate your point, that as to how much they had ruled other people out of the story, made it really difficult for people to play with you.
Yeah. I mean, they wanted this to be a single-player experience, and they didn't want you to be interrupted by other people. Which, I mean, that's just a choice that they made, and they have that right to make that choice. But, at the end of the story, they even remove your own character's voice. They eliminate all voice acting when they introduced this was at the end of the launch of Kotvi. Now, of course, we got chapters later, and you got your voice back, but they went, they claimed that they were going back for the old KOTOR feel, where the rest of the world realizes, nah, you're just going low tech because you've gotten cheap. And it was really jarring because you've never experienced any of that your entire gameplay for years, and then all of a sudden, hey, you've become mute. We didn't want to pay your voice actor to speak these lines, It
was a bad choice, my goodness.
Kotet was an extension of Kotvi, which is natural, and with more companions that got returned, but it's always irked me that literally they take your companions away and then give you literally every other companion. Every single character you have, again, no remembrance of what your character really is. And I do understand that had you romanced them from your original, there are conversations that are had, but everybody gets them back. Now, at the conclusion of the Into the Future, we finally had some companions come back that have only gone to our original characters. I like it. A lot of people are boo-hooing because they want their free stuff without working for it. And I understand that. That's kind of the nature of our society today. But I like that they're actually kind of keep returning some form of identity to our characters. I'd like to see more of that. But I'm sure, people would be bothered by that. So anyway, what you see from a picture of this, and of course I have a very distinct opinion that many people disagree with. But in my opinion, we started with 8 base stories, planetary, bonus, and companions. Every expansion has decreased the width of the story that's provided, culminating in a forced acceptance of your character ruling the galaxy after having effectively obliterated all competition. 8 stories with all the added fun stuff, down to the factions, down to a single story with some individuality, down to the elimination of all diversity to tell a single story with a very limited diversity in scope. And none of your decision-making that you've made to date had any impact. So I always kind of like to just ask, did our choices really matter?
That's what they say in all BioWare games. All I have to say is Mass Effect 3,
man. Everything's
Mass Effect 3 ending.
Right. So you know what that makes me think of? I don't know if you guys have ever played game books way back in the day. They were a thing at one stage where you read entry number 58, and at the end of it, it's like, if you would like to go left turn to 207. If you would like to go right, turn to
Oh,
198.
Choose your own adventure books.
Choose your own adventure.
That's
There was a
what
number
we
of those. Yeah, I used to be into those as a kid. And so you do. Okay, so I want to go to page 207 because I want to make a left in this passage, and then you. But there's only certain. The problem with that is even though you feel like you're choosing your own adventure or doing your own thing, you are there's still only a certain number of pages in this book. They have to move the story along. I can't linger in this room, like observing the texture of the bricks for 30 pages. Like they're like, okay, you leave the room and you get back on the story track. So that's the problem with this kind of thing is even though they're trying to give the illusion of choice or that your choices matter or whatever, they still have a story they're trying to push through.
Like
and
Haskell says,
it's actually
an illusion.
It is actually impossible for quote unquote choices to matter given this. It's only really in a sandbox where there is no story that choices matter.
I mean, that's true and not true. It can be done, but it can't be done in a static. BioWare has done it. Like you took your one character in Mass Effect all the way through and they recorded if you made a choice where you ended up killing one of your companions, that companion was gone for the rest of the game. You had several points, or at least two major ones that could happen in the first part. You could lose two of your bestie characters in the first game, and they don't come back all the way through the rest of the series. But that's because
it greatly affects your story.
Correct.
Now, I hope 6.0 does that for us, where but
I don't.
There's
know how
no Torian or no, and that...
Right, but we'll have to see if they can do that in this format. That's always been my question. Can you really do that in an MMO? I mean, I know WoW did something like that, right, with their Cataclysm thing, where they changed up the world or something. Right? I've never played it, but I've had it explained to me.
I stopped before Cataclysm, so
that it changed the world, and they did that across the game. It was
they actually changed the topography of the entire
map.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a decision that they had to make across the game, and it was a final decision that you can't go back. But what I would say is I think we also need to think about how the base classes and how the base classes were written, and now the content that we get. Number one, how many BioWare, veteran BioWare writers are still at BioWare Austin writing on this game?
The personality has changed.
I don't think there's any. And there were quite a few Knights of the Old Republic writers that wrote at the beginning.
But, I mean...
but they've all gone to Anthem. So
yeah, no, that's what they're working on right now. I guarantee there's nobody writing story on this game.
And so there is, and that's what we have seen, because in point of fact, you're absolutely right. They have, it's natural when a game launches to have about 4 times as many staff as they actually need to sustain the game. But since then, that's why I think it's telling that you can see that the game, the story elements and what's being presented to us and the options that are even available to us has been getting narrower and narrower.
Right.
And this would be a direct result of the fact that that's the direction they've gone, and therefore the staffing has decreased accordingly.
Right.
But with the choice in having different endings is the choice of which character you want to play originally. Had they actually stuck with 8 different stories, they could have kept 8 different endings at the minimum, furthered by some of the choices you made along the way. But that was my biggest frustration when Coffee came out, was the elimination of any individual identity for your character at all, because they could have still split and diversified and told a larger, more.
Now you're the Outlander. Even if they had 3 or 4.
They've got to do a Revan to you at this stage. They have to dethrone you and remove your memory so that you're not a galactic emperor,
Right.
Funny.
But even if I would have been okay if they'd have had 3 or 4 different tracks. Right, like diversify just a little bit. So if one track is the Outlander, the next track is the something else. But you get to pick which track you're going to go on, and then each one has a different story. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, but my point wasn't just about staffing. It was also about how the BioWare hook, their thing is choices, right? In all of their games, you choose an ending, you make a decision, it carries through, it affects your ending. We had the beginning, but as we've lost BioWare veteran BioWare writers, I just wonder whether or not that's not affecting how the stories, because these aren't people who are used to writing that way.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because we bring in Drew Capishin or we bring in Timothy Zahn. These are guys that are used to telling a narrative, a single story in a novel, you know?
Oh, but he was one of the writers that wrote the first part, was one of the, one of the foundational writers at the launch.
Forte is traditional novel, linear storytelling.
Right.
And those are the types of authors that they're leaning on for developing the stories in our game. So, and to that point, I get that. The thing is, to Magic's original point, and it was the same kind of experience I had. It's like we'd had this whole thing pitched to us that we wanted to tell a Mass Effect style story within the Star Wars The Old Republic video game, and that's why we got Coffee. And then we got it, and the very first thing I learned is I'm possessed by the Emperor, and I can't do anything about it. And in point of fact, if I knew I was possessed by the Emperor, and he just told me that I'm like the chosen one, that he wants to rule the galaxy with him, I'm going to immediately tell everybody, hey guys, I'm possessed by the Emperor. You should probably put me in a padded room because I'm either crazy or I'm really dangerous. Right? But I don't even get an option
no, let's
like
give
that.
you power and
like,
put you in charge of the alliance.
Right. Oh no, it's okay. We still totally trust you, even though you're possessed by the Emperor and being compelled to do things. It's totally okay, because we're gonna help take over both factions and head towards galactic salvation as the Jesus upon the throne. It's like,
well, theoretically, if everybody loves the Emperor, like those crazy dudes on
Yavin, better love the Emperor.
That might be a thing. You don't know.
Sorry, bad joke.
So my only premise is, and I don't know if you guys had any questions, the one thing I did have was I had an idea when Rise of the Hutt Cartel came out, because I do understand making 8 individual stories, diversified and all of that, is extraordinarily difficult. But it would have been really cool to at least have one story, but depending on what type of class you have, you might have different things that you're going to do. So for the example of McKeb, rather than having I don't know how many people even know the stories on McKeb, but basically, like, have a moment where it's like, hey, you're a Jedi Knight. I need you to go and infiltrate this place and get this information for us and use your lightsaber and force skills to get this done. Hey, you're a smuggler. I actually need you to go and
smuggle something.
Delivery, right? And
right.
Since you're a captain, you got.
Yeah, when does the smuggler actually smuggle anything in the story? That's a good question.
I know that's the one I'm almost finished with, and I'm on freaking Corellia, and I'm trying to figure that out myself. So
ain't smuggled anything yet.
The agent does all kinds of agenty things. Both of the Jedis do all kinds of Jedi things. Right. The Sith do Sith things. The trooper does trooper stuff. And the smuggler's like, I'm gonna shoot some stuff, and maybe I'll sleep.
Smuggler,
with people.
Smuggler. You're just trying to right wrongs. You get. You're trying to duck the bad guys and get your ship back.
Yeah, but that's not smuggler. You're supposed to just lie your way through everything and get you some money.
I think they did it. I think they did it Han Solo style. Han Solo is never actually smuggling anything in the movies, even though he's a smuggler. So I think that's what they did with this. They're like, let's do a playable Han Solo, and then make sure you can do other species, and people will love it. They'll pay for it. Well, that's what we did. So to wrap this up, we did not smuggle you in here. You came here of your own free will, and we appreciate it. We thank you. We thank you so much for participating in chat, for participating in our straw polls, for watching us on YouTube and downloading our podcast, because we have a great many number of downloads for our podcast, and we are grateful for it. But most of all, we are thankful that you guys are here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate it.
We got
and that brings us to the end of the episode. The council is adjourned. If you'd like to reach us, you can email us at thecouncil@thecouncilswotor.com. You can find Elise on Twitter at abrown35, Magic Ace, the Magic Ace, me at R3DN4, and Sakari, I am Sakari. Don't forget to visit our website, www.thecouncilswotor.com, and follow us on social media. Also, don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/thecouncilswotor. That's it for this week, guys. You can't stop the change any more than you can stop the suns from setting.
Or you can just be Imperial.
All right, guys. You have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
I understand. You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What? How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair. How can you be on the council and not be a master?
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
Forgive me, Master.